Welcome back to Work Fast, our new weekly show. This is our regular time slot, 10 a.m. Pacific, every Friday morning. This is where you'll find us. I'm Scoble Israel, and this is Robert Scoble.
Hey, how are you doing?
How you doing, Robert? Welcome back.
It's another show. What a wild week,
another
too.
show. Yeah, you've been to Seattle.
I've been up in Microsoft and hanging out with startups up there and a bunch of Microsoft executives.
Are you going back to Microsoft?
No. They tried, though. Believe it or not.
Wow.
I said, fast company, it has, they can't get me back.
What were you doing up there?
I was interviewing the head of the office teams, Chris Capicella, and I also met the search team executives and the guys who were working on Windows Live. But that's another show. The office guys were really interesting. And then we saw a bunch of startups. I interviewed Smartsheet, who in July is coming out with a new version, a dramatically redesigned version that you'll probably want to have at your conference, right? And we'll get to our guest in a second.
Whoever the guy they're not saying is, yeah.
Yeah, but it was interesting talking with Microsoft, with Chris Capicella, who's Executive Vice President over there on the Office team, and talking to him about all this new shiny work stuff. And he had a lot of interesting things to say.
We ought to do a segment called Scoble Shiny Objects. You know, we ought to start that. You love shiny things.
I do. I'm watching Twitter right now. I'm on kite.tv right now. I have, Quick running on my cell phone, and lots of fun shiny objects. But this is about the world of work, and you know, Microsoft Office is clearly used by most people and who try to do things rather than watch Twitter all day long. So where do we take the show?
You're supposed to be telling them.
Oh, I'm talking with you. Our first guest. Mark Bernstein, who headed up the Palo Alto Research Center, talked to us about the kinds of productivity innovations that came out of PARC. And he gave us a sense of the amazing progress in office productivity fomented by computing over the past 30 years. Our new guest, this week we want to examine the state of Office today and look at where it's going. The quick answer to that is everywhere. Shell, let's talk. I hate reading these things.
Well,
let's talk about.
Well, you don't do very well at it.
I don't want to read
okay.
anymore.
Let's take it from this point. Last week, what Mark did is he likened office productivity as a boat leaving the desktop application dock, and that really brings us to what Ismael Ghalimi has been doing. Yeah. I think it's fair to call Ismael Mr. Office 2.0. And he's founder and producer of the conference of the same name, which is held in San Francisco every fall in September this year. He's also keeper of the sacred Office 2.0 list, where geeks like you hang out, finding out where the coolest things are. He's a passionate serial entrepreneur. He started with his wife, May, Mondolabs, which has some announcements we'll get to in a few minutes. He started his own, he's co-founder and CEO of Intalio, a new startup which we'll get to. And he does something which sounds to me a little like Survivor on commercial television, something called extreme productivity seminars.
But to me, the real key point is when you go to Google and search on Office 2.0, you find his database. And that's really why I'm excited to talk with you.
Okay. Ismael, welcome to Work Fast.
Well, thanks a lot for having me today.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Let's start at the beginning. It's New Year's Day, January 1st, 2006.
That's correct.
Some people wake up and they make resolutions. They say, I'm going to quit smoking, I'm going to be nicer to my kids. You say, I'm going to quit using desktop apps.
That's right. I was in Japan, in Tokyo, for New Year's Eve with my wife, staying at some friend's place. And I wanted to do some email and write a document for a contract for Intalio. And I use this computer, but it's a Japanese computer, right? So you've got Microsoft Word in Japanese. And so I looked for an online version of a word processor and found a couple of things like Zoho. And that gave me the idea of trying to see if I could have a complete setup, an office productivity setup on the web. And that's what got us started with that experiment of migrating completely online. And we did it in about 3 months. So for the last 2.5 years, I've been completely online, no desktop app beside the web browser.
That's entirely cool. What have you lost by not being on the desktop?
I've lost the fear of viruses. I've lost the fear of losing my laptop with all that, sacred data on it. I've lost the need to have my own computer, like here I'm using your computer shell, and I can be productive on the go with that. To be honest, I lost a couple of sort of advanced features that you get in all these desktop tools, but those are the features that usually you don't need most of the time. So I think there are primarily benefits to that. It was not easy 2 years ago because the solutions were incomplete. They were really prototypes. You didn't have a spreadsheet, for example, that was decent, and they were not integrated. But in just 24 months, a lot of progress has been made. Google came out with Google Apps at the first Office 2.0 conference. It was fairly simple, if not primitive at the beginning, but they've been steadily improving the product, and now these things work.
When I was at Chris's office yesterday, he said, yeah, all this shiny stuff is lots of fun, but his customers are telling him, well, I need to be able to back it up, and I need to be able to search it for legal reasons. I need to make sure it's always on, and they see things like Twitter, and they get freaked out about the Web 2.0 movement. And he also said, look at my integration. He said, here, call my phone number. And his desk showed that a phone call was coming in, and his mobile phone rang. And then if he said, don't answer, it went into voicemail, and the voicemail showed up in Outlook, right, as a message in Outlook. That integration is really attractive to enterprises, isn't it?
That's true. That being said, you could do similar integrations with online tools like Grand Central, for example, that was acquired by Google. And the issue of backup and security and searching, I think, are being addressed. When you start to see companies like Merrill Lynch or Japan Post with 40, 50,000 users migrating to Salesforce.com, you must believe that those guys have figured out a way to back the data up and to address all the regulations, all the requirements that you have sort of on the legal side. Another thing to consider is that at the end of the day, maintaining all this infrastructure yourself with your own servers is actually difficult and expensive. And as good as my sysadmin might be, at the end of the day, I might trust Gmail more than myself to make sure that the data is going to remain online to a large extent. But I'll be honest with you, every month I do a complete backup of everything that I have online, and I put it on a hard drive at my parents' place in Europe, so that if there is a big earthquake here in San Francisco, knock on wood, it's not going to happen tomorrow, I don't lose that data, and I back it up on my .Mac service.
And you're probably ahead of 95% of people in the world who don't back up. I've had friends who told me their laptop got ripped off, and they lost all their photos, lost all their documents, everything on their laptop.
Absolutely, all that data is really important. I mean, most of our lives are going digital, and we are not doing what we need to really back it up because it's just too much of a pain. If it's on Gmail, it's backed up by Google for you. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Most of the world doesn't have ubiquitous Wi-Fi, and for me, a lot of my productivity is, especially now with what airplane tickets cost, I'm in the back of the plane and I want to get some work done. If all my stuff is online, what do? Read a book?
I get that question all the time, and the answer is yes, absolutely. Read a book, take a nap, watch a movie. There are very, very few times in your year where you will not be able to go online when you want to go online. And being on a flight is actually one of those rare moments when you couldn't go online, at least until now. It's coming, There are a couple of airlines that offer it, and if we fast forward 3-5 years down the road, I think every major airline is going to provide access to the internet on their flights. Today, most of the world gets connectivity. Actually, in many developing countries, you get better connectivity than what we have, for example, in the US. And my experience is that I pretty much manage to get connected every time I want to. It's a matter of selecting the right devices. You want to have a 3G modem on your laptop, either external or built into the laptop. You want a good smartphone that will allow you to get access to that critical piece of data while you're staying online, waiting for your hamburger at a fast food store, that kind of thing. But really, I don't find that to be very much of a problem, to be honest with you.
So you're kind of going back to an old ad slogan that was ahead of its time, and that was Sun Microsystems, the network is the computer. Has that happened? Do you see the net being your computer now?
I very much think so, yeah. I think the vision was right on target. It was just ahead of time. And must be difficult for those guys to acknowledge that. But there's nothing you can do against bad timing. Now, if you look at it now, it's really working. You've got access to virtually unlimited storage, unlimited compute power with things like Amazon EC2 at a fraction of the cost of sort of trying to build it yourself in your own data center.
Yeah, I interviewed a couple of kids who started a new business, and they spent $8,000 to get their website done, and they actually won a contest and won $8,000, so they actually are already profitable.
Yeah, it totally works. It makes all kinds of new businesses possible, especially in terms of outsourcing, and yeah, there is no stopping it.
You keep the database of Office 2 stuff. How much of that stuff, because there's hundreds of things on that database already, how many things do you actually try out of that list of 500? Is it 500 things?
Right now we've got about 800.
800, wow.
I try to try as much of it as possible. I would say I've tried about 600. And I use on a regular basis something like 100 of these apps. On a daily basis, a good dozen. So it's the Office 2.0 database. And we're doing a lot of work now during the summer to make it more of a destination site and someplace where people will be able to say what they're using. And that way we'll sort of integrate all that information and be able to tell you, well, there are a lot of people that are having success using Gmail in combination with Salesforce.com, so it must work beyond the marketing hype that you get.
Well, they're about to make an announcement too. I've gotten a press invite to see Salesforce and Google in about a week. Where they're going to announce some new things together.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Do you have some insight on what they're going to announce?
I don't, and my business is not to bring the scoops on. That's really what you guys do, so I want to respect that.
That's what he does. But scoops go to Scoble.
Yeah, say hello to Mark for me.
I'll take the case study after the scoop becomes something.
Do the real work.
What are you seeing as because that's one reason we wanted to have you as one of the first guests. What are you seeing as a trend of those 800 things? What is happening in the world of work that's different than a year or 2 or 5 years ago?
I think what's interesting is really the level of adoption that we're seeing. There was the thinking at the first user Office 2.0 conference almost 2 years ago that stuff was for the small guys. It was for the students, the independent contractors, the very small businesses, that it would take a long time for the large corporations to adopt it. And what we're seeing is exactly the opposite. There is a lot more adoption on the corporate side. We at Intalio are doing a lot of work with Google and Capgemini to help large organizations deploy Google Apps. Intalio does business process management software, and we help them integrate Google Apps with their existing systems. And we're seeing organizations that are migrating from traditional messaging systems like Microsoft Exchange or Lotus Notes, 10, 20, 30,000 employees. So it's very significant adoption, and they have to reinvent a lot of business processes to make it work, a lot of workflows. But I think they're starting to really understand the benefits, and then it's kind of trickling down to smaller organizations or departments. The very small businesses, I believe, actually will be the sort of let movers in that game.
Are we going to get a demo?
That's a little later in the show.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Oh, because I know you have a lot of cool things to show us.
He's got a couple of cool things to show us.
Yeah.
Now, I know where I wanted to go. I want to go back. So on New Year's Day, you started this thing, and 9 months later, there was Office 2.0. A few hundred people showed up. How did you get from, I'm going to screw around with online apps, to producing a show?
The first show was very much an accident. It was not planned at all. Essentially, I started blogging about this Office 2.0 thing in January 2006. Did that for about 6 months, sharing my experience of moving online. Developed a very small following of geeks who found that it was cool for whatever reason. And then something interesting happened. There is that guy living in the US but coming from Bulgaria, I believe, who took it upon himself to buy a domain name, office20con.com, design a logo, and build a website for a conference that didn't exist, just because a week before I had suggested on the blog that we should do some kind of meetup. So I sat on it for 3 weeks. He sent that to me with the login and password and said, you know, go do it. Sat on it for 3 weeks because I'm not in the conference business. I'm running a 50-people software company on a daily basis. And after 3 weeks, realized that's just waste. So let's share it with the rest of the world. So wrote a blog post saying, hey, we might do a conference. And in a day, we signed 35 speakers. In 3 weeks, we signed 65 sponsors. The whole show was organized in less than 4 weeks. So of course, we had to find a hotel, and the only one that was available was the most expensive in the city, the St. Regis. So that's why we did it there.
Beautiful place.
Oh, we love it, and the folks there are great. And that was the first Office 2.0 conference. And because we had no time to even print a program, we said, well, we'll do it without any paper, and instead we'll give to everybody an iPod Nano that we will preload with the program for the event, with the bios of the speakers and the logos of the sponsors. So I hired a bunch of friends over the weekend, gave them pizza and beer, and we preloaded this like 350 iPods. And that was it. That's how we started this trend of having an event with just a mobile device. The next year we did that with an iPhone so that we could get connected. This coming year, it's a surprise what we're going to get as a device, but it should be cool.
One last question on that line. Over the 3 years, how is the show, from a technology point of view, how has the show evolved?
What we are seeing is, first, the products are really maturing very, very fast. It's amazing, actually, to see the progress. I mentioned Google Labs, which was launched at the first event, and you look at how much progress they've made since then. It's quite impressive. It's actually usable. You can migrate now from Microsoft Office to Google Labs. We've been amazed by what came out of Zoho. What those guys are doing is absolutely fantastic. They are addressing every single area of the Office 2.0 spectrum and making it work in an integrated fashion. You've got single sign-on, you can exchange the data between the different apps. You've mentioned Smartsheet. They're doing some very interesting things, trying to reinvent new workflows. So it's just maturing very fast, a lot faster than what we saw 15 years ago or 20 years ago with the first wave of Office productivity tools.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that please stay with us until the end of the show, because we're on several chat rooms. We're going to be on kite.tv/Scoble. If you can get to that from Fast Company after the show, and you're going to stick around and talk with us, right?
Yeah,
and talk with the online audience. I can see some of their questions already that are pretty interesting. So,
okay, now's the part where we're supposed to say, do you want to show us a couple of your favorites?
Sure. Well, I make no mystery that one of my favorites is Salesforce.com. I don't use it like most people do. I don't use it as a CRM tool. I use it as a productivity tool. So that's where I manage my tasks and my events and all my databases. That's also how we implement the extreme productivity process that we present at the seminars, which is essentially an implementation of David Allen's Getting Things Done methodology. I'm sure you guys have read the book or at least know about it. We're a very strong believer in the approach. So I'm using Salesforce.com as a way to manage all my data, and essentially my entire life. Our wedding 3 years ago was managed as a Salesforce.com campaign, like marketing campaign. And what we're doing with it...
they didn't go on the honeymoon with you, did they?
Well, actually, we had a funny honeymoon where my wife went on a like solo honeymoon for 4 months. She told me, "Hey, I want to get traveling out of my system before we get kids." So she went on a round the world trip, and I stayed home working, you know, like to pay the bill. So that was the honeymoon, and we managed it with Salesforce.com as well. That was your question. Okay. So what we're doing with Salesforce is we're extending it to support any kind of data, any kind of processes, and so for example, I do a lot of flying. One of my projects is to become an airline transport pilot. I've never actually worked as a pilot, but it's a child dream, and I'd like to check that box.
You're also a pro scuba diver, and you race these hot motorcycles too, right?
I don't race them, I just drive them. Okay. So for example, we use Salesforce to track all our flying. So you can see here all the aircraft types I'm checked out on, all my recent flying, and whether I can fly instruments, whether I'm current, or whether I can fly at night. And here recently I've not been flying at night very often, so right now I couldn't take you on a flight. We use it to manage things that are funky. I know that you like Legos, and I love Legos too, and especially the Star Wars theme. So there is a very cool model that was built 3 years ago by a Lego employee. You can see it here. It's about 7 feet long. It's the Republic Star Destroyer that you see crashing at the beginning of episode 3. And it has 35,000 parts. It weighs about 300 pounds. And it's a unique model that was built and sold on eBay for about $35,000. And about a year ago, I decided that I would build a replica of that. So I would try to essentially design a blueprint for it. You can't buy it. It's just a one-off, right? Try to get a blueprint and identify all the parts that I would need to buy online to make it. And so to track that, we built an app in Salesforce.com using the App Exchange, where we have an inventory of all our parts. So you can see here the part number. You can see the image of the part. You can see how many we have, which color, that kind of stuff. So it's just to show that Salesforce does things that go way beyond sort of the customer relationship management that, quite frankly, is fairly boring. Another cool thing that we're seeing right now is really how to use Office 2.0 as a way to collaborate, and especially collaborate with people that are not necessarily working for your company. What we like about tools from Microsoft, for example, Microsoft Exchange, is that they're very good at supporting collaboration within the firewall, collaboration within the company. But if you try to use them for supporting collaboration with partners and customers that are not using the same application, maybe they're using Lotus Notes or Gmail or whatever email client they're using, then a lot of the advanced features that you have in Exchange just break down. So what we're looking at is how we can use Office 2.0 tools to do things like that. And one of the biggest challenges that we're trying to solve is the issue of scheduling meetings. So for example, my participation in this show this morning, or scheduling a breakfast. There are way too many emails that are exchanged to do that. Yeah. There are lots of services that have been brought to market over the past 2 years to solve that, but they are a little bit too complex to use, and as a result, they just don't work well enough. So what we've done is, first we've tried to publish data on the internet about when we are available. So you can see here, for example, a public web page called freebz.ghalimi.name. That's my own FreeBZ calendar that's published using Google Calendar. And the data, the events come straight out of Salesforce.com. So you can see, for example, here there's an interview from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and you can see it as an event, and it's just marked busy because I don't want everybody to know when I'm doing there. All I want people to know is when I'm available and when I'm not. When I'm traveling, I show it. So tonight I take a plane to Australia. I go to Australia for a day. So here I'm showing Australia trip so that people in my extended network, like the people who subscribe to your feeds, know if they are in Australia that they can meet me during the weekend there, and we can grab a beer together. Based on that data, so we syndicate that data as an iCal feed, then we feed it to a news service called Presdo or Presdo. That's presdo.com. And here it's pretty cool. It has a very simple user interface. It's like a search thing. And let's say that I'd want to have lunch with you next week. All I would do is I would go there at presdo.com. I don't even have to register. And I would tap something like lunch with Shell next week. And the system is smart enough to understand that. and it's going to identify based on my calendar that I publish on the internet that I have a free time next Tuesday, and it knows that lunch are usually around noon time, and it's going to look up my contact database. It's going to identify the people who have Shell as a first or last name. If there's only one, it's going to pick that guy. It's going to send you an email suggesting the meeting, suggesting the place. If the system has my address, which it does, and has your address, which it does as well because I recorded it from your business card, then it's going to select locations that are right in the middle, like restaurants, make a couple of suggestions, and
cool.
You're going to say, yeah, I'm going
cool.
to pick that date, pick that location. It's going to send me back an email, and that's it. The meeting has been scheduled. So we're very excited about that.
That is entirely cool. The scheduling online has been something going on for over 10 years, but it sounds like somebody's getting it right for a change.
That's right.
Yeah. So, any questions coming in?
Oh, there are actually. There's a lot. I've been watching the chat room while we've been talking because this is a live interactive show, and as we get more and more comfortable with using these tools during our show, we're going to be bringing more of this interactivity into it.
So you're saying all that stuff actually works?
It works.
This is cool.
But the interesting questions are about rich internet applications. Frank Cohen, for instance, asks a pretty self-serving question: how are companies that provide RIA testing their apps and solving problems?
Oh, that's a techie question. You've got to put it out there and let people use it and see what works or what doesn't. I don't really think that you can automate a lot of that stuff. We're trying to do that at Intalio. We do enterprise software, and we've got about 40,000 companies using the software. We do a lot of quality assurance internally, and we do a lot of rich internet applications. But quite frankly, the best QA work that we can get done is by our early adopters. So we have a community website where we push our alpha and beta releases, and we get people finding bugs and making suggestions for improvement that way. I think that process works a lot better and is also a lot cheaper.
Another question from Jeremiah Oyang is, aside from who?
He's a ringer.
Aside from collaboration, he gave us props on Twitter today, so that's cool.
Good. Okay.
Aside from collaboration, what are the promises of Office 2? Are there dangers from data being offsite? I think we covered that a little bit. Although a lot of regulated companies and a lot of companies like pharmas just don't want data to go out. In fact, I know some people that the company disables their USB ports so that they can't take data out of the company, right? And he's asking, what are about business groups adopting these tools without the aid of IT? What are the risks? And we certainly are seeing people go around IT departments and the control that they have.
Yeah, there's no question about the fact that this move to Office 2.0 is going to take time, just because we have to deal with this fear and uncertainty and doubt, with a lot of good and bad reasons behind it. What we're seeing is that a lot of people are becoming very pragmatic about it. When they look at the question of security, for example, they acknowledge the fact that most of the crimes are perpetrated by insiders. And so the fact that you put your data on Google's data center might actually end up making it more secure. There's the issue of data privacy or confidentiality, and here I had a very interesting discussion with one of the top 3 oil and gas companies in the world, with their CIO. And he was telling me, we're a large company, there's a lot of confidential information, but at the end of the day, the only information we care about that we don't want to go out is the location of the oil fields. The rest is pretty mundane, and we don't mind using online tools for that.
Ismael, we're running out of time.
Yeah, we are.
Tell the people to stick around, Robert.
Yeah, we're in the chat room. We have a chat room on fastcompany.tv. We're also at kite.tv/Scobleizer, where we'll stick around and answer some questions. What else?
Ask me who we have next week.
Well, who do we have next week, Shel?
Thank you, Robert. It's right up there. Next week we have Michel Azar, and I'm forgetting the other person's name because it was a change, but he is the founder of Blue Shirt Nation, which is a 20,000 person behind the firewall community. Michel is
at Best Buy.
At Best Buy.
One of the largest retailers in the world.
Go ahead, tell them.
I don't know anything. I'm talking to you.
And they will be coming here to tell us how they're using employee engagement to make Best Buy a better store, make customers have a better experience. So That's it. We have a minute. Do you have another question you want to stick in there?
Well, we have to thank our sponsor, SAP.
SAP, yes. Thank you, SAP.
And I'm really looking forward to using some more of these tools. It's how do you test 600 tools? How do you use it? Because I find I get hundreds of things in my inbox, and I'm just struggling to try them out.
You've got to come to the Extreme Productivity Seminar, which show you how to get a lot of things done with the same amount of time.
That's one of the best plugs I ever heard, but I'm supposed to ask you, you had a big announcement about making it a lab, making Mondolabs a live experiment. What's that all about?
Well, we only have 10 seconds, so.
If you're looking for office space in downtown Palo Alto, very affordable, look up the Mondolabs incubator.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, now, get back to work.
On a 1, 2, 3. Get back to work. Thank you.